A millionaire kills poor people without facing any consequences, and the police don't suspect a thing.
Hey, Paul!
1989, New York. Patrick Bateman is a 27-year-old successful investment banker whose life revolves around trendy restaurants and maintaining an image of respectability. He has wealthy friends, a beloved fiancée, and money, but he genuinely hates it all. Morning workouts, choosing clothes, exercising, expensive accessories, and furniture, everything that makes him seem like an ordinary person. But that's not the case. Behind the facade of a successful man lies a true psychopath, suffering from a lack of his own identity. Tormented inside, he dreams of inflicting suffering on others. At a restaurant, he wants to strangle the waiter, and in a nightclub, he fantasizes about bathing in the blood of the bartender who refused to accept card payments. The only person Patrick tries to be kind to is his secretary, Jean, whom he advises to dress more sexily. In the evening, the banker meets his fiancée and friends, who disgust him just as much as the rest of high society. Behind every smile lies something shameful, including his fiancée, Evelyn, who is secretly seeing one of Patrick's friends. This doesn't bother him at all since he also has a mistress, his fiancée's best friend, Courtney. On his way home one evening, Patrick meets a lonely woman, strikes up a conversation with her, and then kills her. The next morning, he asks a laundromat to clean the blood, resulting in an argument with the staff. Promising Courtney a surprise, Patrick tries to book a table at the elite restaurant Dorsia, but it's impossible. The manager mocks Patrick for being naive, as only high society can dine there. Trying to save face, Patrick decides to get Courtney drunk so she won't notice that he took her to a cheaper restaurant instead. The next morning at a business meeting, Patrick receives a compliment from Louis, who admires his suit. Patrick enjoys the flattery, but he can't stand when people try to touch him and immediately pulls away. He feels even more angered by Paul Allen, a successful colleague who leads a wealthier lifestyle. Paul directly communicates with the company owner and handles financial affairs, and he can easily secure a table at Dorsia. When he meets Patrick, Paul mistakes him for Marcus Halberstram, another colleague from the investment company. Marcus has a similar style, the same glasses, and the same hairstylist, so Patrick isn't surprised that Paul mixes them up, as it's common among businessmen on Wall Street. During a business meeting, Patrick decides to show off his new business card, designed in a unique color with a perfect font. His display of superficial vanity fails to impress, as his friends and colleagues have also put significant effort into creating their own sophisticated cards. Seeing that others outshine him, Patrick begins to sweat and seethe with anger, struggling to stay composed. After work, he heads home and ends up in a dark alley, where the only people around are a homeless man and his dog. Deciding to engage with the beggar, the banker feigns sympathy and understanding, but it's all an act. At some point, his kind demeanor turns into uncontrollable rage. Pulling a knife from his briefcase, Patrick brutally kills both the homeless man and his dog, the latter barking and attracting unwanted attention. The next morning, Patrick goes for his regular procedures, continuing to care for his body. He is completely human in appearance, with flesh, hair, teeth, and blood, but lacks any real emotions. The only driving forces for him are greed and disgust. He realizes his nightly bloodlust is not only intensifying but also becoming permanent. Patrick acknowledges that he's on the brink of madness, and his mask of normalcy will soon slip, exposing the ruthless American psychopath beneath. That evening, Patrick meets Evelyn at a Christmas party. He has no intention of listening to her whims and finds a way to speak with Paul, reminding him about the promised dinner. Soon, Patrick and Paul head to a modest cafe, where the more successful colleague continues to mistake him for someone else. Believing he's talking to Marcus, Paul calls Patrick a total failure who doesn't deserve either a prestigious job or a beautiful woman like Evelyn. Manipulating his colleague, Patrick gets Paul drunk and lures him back to his apartment. As he plays a new song, hip to be square by his favorite band, Huey Lewis and the News, Patrick meticulously prepares for the murder. Acting behind Paul's back, he puts on a raincoat to avoid splattering his expensive suit with blood and grabs a freshly polished axe. Seizing the right moment, Patrick attacks Paul and brutally finishes him off. A little calmer, Patrick decides to dispose of Paul's body and takes it by taxi. On the street, he's spotted by Louis, but Louis doesn't think twice about the large, expensive suitcase. After disposing of the main evidence, the corpse, Patrick heads to Paul's apartment to cover up the crime. He leaves a fake voicemail on Paul's answering machine, claiming that Paul went on a business trip to London. Gathering his belongings and toiletries, Patrick takes the suitcase, ensuring that his fabricated version of events seems as believable as possible. A few days later, Secretary Jean informs Patrick that Detective Donald Kimball has arrived to investigate Paul's disappearance. The banker is reluctant to speak with the detective, fearing exposure. He asks Jean to lie and say he's not at work, but that's impossible since Donald is already at the door. Trying to prepare for what could be a revealing conversation, Patrick pretends to be on the phone and invites the detective in. During their conversation, he avoids direct answers to questions, as he can't lie convincingly or quickly come up with an alibi for the night Paul disappeared. Promising to remember something and report back, Patrick abruptly ends the conversation, citing a sudden business meeting. At home, the banker tries to calm down by working out and watching horror movies. In the evening, he hires a prostitute, promising her a generous reward for their time together. Pretending to be Paul, Patrick easily gains the trust of Christy and promises her an unforgettable time at his place. On the way there, he calls to order another escort. Patrick behaves courteously, like a true gentleman, and charms the women, making them feel safe and relaxed. Trusting their wealthy client, Sabrina and Christy indulges every whim. They strip off their clothes and follow Patrick's commands, deciding to let him film their fun. Conversations about careers and musical tastes don't interest the women, but they're willing to spend the night with the rich man who is paid handsomely. While making love, Patrick doesn't focus on the women, instead admiring himself, which seems odd to them. At night, he refuses to let them leave, as it's only the beginning of their fun. Producing tools, Patrick uses them to inflict harm. It's only near morning that the women leave his apartment, bruised and bloody, but with a decent sum of money in their hands. During the day, Patrick meets his friends at a restaurant, where they discuss the women and his feelings toward them. The banker admits that two opposing sides live within him, one that wants to be romantic with women, and another, darker side that fantasizes about killing them. His friends are slightly shocked by this insane admission, but their conversation is interrupted by Louis, who boasts about his new business card. The gold lettering and elegant color scheme once again provoke Patrick's anger, as even someone as pathetic as Louis surpasses him in taste. Wanting to rid himself of Louis, Patrick follows him to the restroom and, using gloves, attempts to strangle him. Louis mistakes this for a confession of love, as he has feelings for Patrick and has suspected the sentiment is mutual. He begins kissing Patrick's hands and suggests moving to a more comfortable location, which shocks Patrick. Overwhelmed with disgust, he decides to wash his hands, forgetting to remove the gloves. Eager to escape the shame of the situation, Patrick panics and leaves the restaurant, abandoning his plan to kill Louis. Soon after, the banker encounters the detective investigating Paul's mysterious disappearance. Donald asks Patrick to remember where he was the night Paul was last seen and when they met. Patrick cannot recall that day clearly and says the first thing that comes to mind. The detective claims he has other information and catches Patrick in a lie, making him even more nervous. Before leaving, Donald asks Patrick to think carefully and remember that fateful day, as otherwise, he would have a lot of work to do, and Patrick might run into trouble. Trying to avoid panic, Patrick decides to relax and spend time with Courtney. Knowing that his mistress is about to get married, Patrick decides to end their secret meetings. Courtney is hurt by this decision, as she is in love with him and hoped he would act differently. Understanding that nothing will change and his interests are more important than hers, Courtney says goodbye to him once and for all. In the evening, Patrick meets a friend to visit a nightclub. They abuse alcohol and white powder, after which they meet several girls. Successful, handsome, and wealthy, Patrick easily seduces a model student and invites her to his place with the intention to kill her. The next morning, without fear of being exposed, Patrick plays with a lock of hair from the blonde he killed the previous night in his office. He invites his secretary, Jean, to dinner and lets her choose any restaurant. The girl suggests meeting at Dorsia, which triggers a fit of rage in her boss. He calls to reserve a table but, as usual, is refused. Pretending to have secured a reservation for the evening, Patrick proposes they meet at his apartment for drinks before heading to the restaurant. The girl eagerly agrees, not hiding her interest in him and her desire to impress. In the evening, Jean arrives at Patrick's apartment, unaware that he has the head of the girl who agreed to visit him in his refrigerator. Their conversation turns to life and work, with Jean expressing that she feels successful. She is enthralled by Patrick and openly shows her interest, but this doesn't appeal to him. Instead of a romantic evening, he stands behind her and aims a nail gun at the back of her head. At some point, he receives a message from Evelyn on the answering machine, which makes Jean realize that Patrick is still in a relationship. She feels uncomfortable and offers to leave to avoid making the situation more awkward. Patrick agrees and lets her go, warning her that if she stays, he might not be able to control himself and will likely hurt her. The next day, Patrick meets with the detective again, who continues his search for Paul. During lunch, Donald tells Patrick that he doesn't suspect the banker of being involved in his colleague's disappearance. The detective literally creates an alibi for Patrick, firmly convincing him that he was with friends and spent the entire evening with them. Moreover, someone claimed to have seen Paul in London, which raises doubts about the whole investigation. Some colleagues had already made similar statements, but they were mistaken, having confused someone else with Paul. Now, however, this information is nearly official, making it highly unlikely that the investigation will lead anywhere. Considering this, Donald also leans toward the idea that Paul simply grew tired of work and decided to take an unplanned vacation. Patrick feels relieved by the news but also slightly upset, beginning to doubt himself and what happened a few days ago. In the evening, Patrick returns to the place where he met Christy and once again invites her to spend the evening together. Christy hesitates to join the wealthy man, as past traumas had landed her in the emergency room. Her injuries and multiple wounds might require surgery, so the easily accessible woman promises to consult a lawyer. Patrick, eager to make amends, writes her a check as compensation. He also offers a large sum of money and promises to behave better, vowing not to repeat the mistakes of their last encounter. Christy decides to take the risk and agrees, as it's an offer too tempting to turn down. Soon, the couple heads to the apartment of the late Paul, where Patrick's acquaintance, Elizabeth, joins them. After adding some white powder to the champagne, Patrick tries to charm the women, suggesting they engage in an intimate act for his viewing pleasure. The women initially resist the temptation, dismissing the idea as foolish, but eventually change their minds under the influence of the illicit substances. Later that night, Patrick, Elizabeth, and Christy are involved in an intimate encounter when Patrick loses control and becomes violent. He bites Elizabeth until she bleeds, then kills her in bed. Christy realizes where this is headed and attempts to escape, determined not to become the next victim of the psychopath. Paul's apartment is so large that Christy struggles to find an exit. Opening each door along the way, she discovers several dead women and understands that Patrick is a merciless maniac with no regrets. Eventually, he catches up to her and bites her leg, but Christy manages to fight him off. After finally finding an exit, she knocks on neighboring doors, but no one answers. Desperate, she runs down the stairs, hearing Patrick pursuing her with a chainsaw in hand. Unable to catch her, the psychopath drops the chainsaw, and it kills her when it lands on her as she reaches the first floor. The next day, Patrick sketches everything that happened, realizing that he is finding it harder to control his emotions. Meeting Evelyn at a restaurant, he breaks off their engagement, stating that he never had feelings for her. She throws a tantrum, drawing the attention of others, which only enrages Patrick more. Refusing to continue the conversation, he leaves the restaurant. Later that evening, Patrick decides to use an ATM to withdraw some cash. While there, he notices a stray cat and picks it up, showing care for the animal. At that very moment, Patrick sees a message on the ATM screen. "Feed me a stray cat." Losing more control, he tries to shove the cat into the machine and, in a fit of madness, decides to shoot the cat. An elderly woman passing by tries to stop him, but he shoots her instead. After committing another murder, Patrick notices a police patrol that has witnessed the crime. Trying to escape from pursuit, the banker checks the cars and activates their alarms to disorient the officers. Hiding in an alley, Patrick finds himself trapped as two police cars surround him. The officers open fire, but the banker proves more accurate. He kills the officers and blows up their car, buying himself a brief moment to evade capture. Hoping to hide, he runs into an office building, only to realize he has entered the wrong one. People there mistake him for Mr. Smith, but Patrick kills the security guard in panic and searches for an exit, killing the janitor in the process. Finally making it to his own office, Patrick greets the familiar security guard and hides in his office. Realizing the police are still after him and have deployed a helicopter to search for him, Patrick decides to call his lawyer, Harold Carnes. The lawyer isn't available, so the banker leaves a voicemail confessing to all his crimes. He admits to killing many homeless people, prostitutes, his ex-girlfriend, and Paul. The number of his victims may range from 20 to 40, but he needs help and legal defense. In tears, Patrick acknowledges that he is a sick man who needs treatment, not prison. The next morning, Patrick visits Paul's apartment to clean up the remains of his deceased friend and the women. Inside, he finds the place empty and for sale, and in one room, a few people are discussing the details of a deal. Breaking into the closet and checking the other rooms, Patrick notices there is no blood or bodies anywhere. He pretends to be a potential buyer who saw the ad in the newspaper, but the realtor easily sees through his act. She hints that she knows who he is and asks him to leave, as he isn't there to buy the apartment. The mysterious woman scares Patrick, so he apologizes for the intrusion and leaves as quickly as possible. In his desperate state, Patrick calls the office and tearfully tells Jean that he won't be coming to work. She gets nervous, sensing something is wrong with her boss, and decides to check his desk. In one of the drawers, she finds Patrick's office journal, filled with detailed drawings of the murders and injuries he inflicted on his victims. Meanwhile, Patrick goes to a restaurant to meet his colleagues. There, he spots his lawyer and reminds him of the voicemail he left the night before. Carnes mistakes Patrick for another colleague and laughs off his behavior, thinking it was a good but rather childish joke. The lawyer is tired of the jokes about the pathetic Patrick and suggests they forget about it. Patrick desperately tries to explain that he is standing right in front of him, once again confessing to the murders and recounting all the details of his crimes. Carnes doesn't believe Patrick, dismissing his story as impossible, especially since he had dined with Paul twice in London. Tired of the futile conversation, the lawyer leaves, telling Patrick to leave him alone. Confused and overwhelmed, Patrick returns to his friends. His colleagues are watching a speech by Ronald Reagan, discussing whether he is a harmless old man or a hidden psychopath. Disoriented and tortured by psychological stress, Patrick realizes that his crimes will never be uncovered. His pain, anxiety, and fear consume him from the inside out. The banker can't tell if everything that's happened is real or just a product of his sick imagination, but what matters is that he has accepted his fate. His story holds no lessons, and he will avoid the punishment he secretly desires. Patrick understands that he hasn't repented, because his confession meant nothing. The ending leaves the viewers in uncertainty about what really happened. Which plot details suggest that Patrick's murders and other actions might have been mere fantasies? And is that really the case? Drop your thoughts down below, hit the like button, and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.